green is the color of life.
Green is the power of nature.
Greenery is part of Singapore's DNA.
So that is why, especially in times of stress, that pandemic, they will all go back to nature.
Going green is fast becoming a Singaporean obsession.
There is a shift in terms of mindset.
We really want to protect nature to protect ourselves.
While Singaporeans are rediscovering their green heritage, protecting our green spaces is complicated as the island is small and home to millions of people.
There is always a constant struggle between conservation and development.
As Singapore boldly aspires to be a city in nature, can it rise to the challenge and be truly green? Lush green rainforest once covered the island of Singapore, but little remains of the original forest. The city that emerged in its place has steely foundations, yet it's never lost a longing to be green. With world-class parks and millions of trees throughout the city, Singapore has long valued green spaces for enhancing the well-being of its people. But the city's inhabitants can't take them for granted. It's one of the most densely populated countries in the world. Its rhythm hurried and frenetic. Its citizens restless as ants. The city only paused when the pandemic dawned.
When COVID started, because we can't actually travel out, we have to stay at home. And then when there's the easing of restrictions, people are actually going out to nature areas to relax, to enjoy the fresh air.
The people poured into the island's green spaces in greater numbers than before.
We do have this natural affinity to want to connect with nature.
But can busy Singaporeans slow down enough to connect with nature?
When I observe people spending time in nature, there's a reflection of the old me. People who are walking really fast, who aren't really being aware of the nature. So it's very objective, focused, and much more fast-paced. So it's a general walk through the park. But you're not really in the park. I feel like in society there was this gap. We know we should slow down, but it was hard for us to slow down. And that was when it really hit me in my face that there is some kind of speed sickness in our society.
To help Singaporeans let go of hurriedness and embrace nature's healing qualities, Yu Min teaches them the Japanese practice of forest bathing.
We encourage people to pause for a moment from your walking and just listen. How does the forest sound like? Engaging our sense of touch, you begin to feel that actually there is a very gentle breeze. A lot of times when we walk fast, we miss out on a lot of things that are happening around us. But when we slow down and pause, we begin to notice. There's this other whole journey. It's about relating to the place, building a relationship with maybe a particular tree. This whole relational approach to forest bathing helps individuals to relate to nature. They could be relating so much that they now feel they are a part of nature. Then as individuals, we take actions because internally from within, we really want to protect nature to protect ourselves.
As nature awakens more Singaporeans to its benefits, some seek to promote the conservation of our green spaces. In southwest Singapore lies Dover Forest, a forested area about the size of 46 football fields. Residents in neighbouring Ghim Moh enjoy what the forest offers, a cool breeze and a natural respite. From December 2020 to March 2021, the Housing Development Board consulted the public on its studies of the area. Over 50,000 people petitioned to have Dover Forest saved. The episode turned a math teacher into an environmental conservationist.
I've been living in Ghim Moh area for about eight and a half years. So I knew I had to do something for this patch of green that I see every day and which I enjoy but I take for granted. My first impression was this is a real forest. It is something that is alive and it would be a pity to see all of them go.
Chin Tat's strategy for saving the forest involved nominating trees with heritage value for state protection.
If I strategically spread out these nominees throughout the whole forest, a big part of the forest will be protected as well. The Heritage Tree Panel will consider things like its aesthetic value, its cultural value, its botanical value, and so on. So these are the two most important for me, of a large enough size and good enough in terms of beauty. It is love at first sight, maybe. Okay, so this tree, it is called the grey fig. This is nationally critically endangered in Singapore. And kampong villagers last time, they used to pray to such banyan trees.
Chin Tat nominated 11 trees and has shared his findings with the Housing Board and the National Parks Board. While his feedback has been welcomed, Chin Tat says Dover Forest may not be conserved as it's a secondary forest that has sprung up on farmland.
Forests overgrown, abandoned kampongs, probably they contain a lot of invasive species. In the eyes of an expert, the real forests of value are the really primeval forest that has never been cut down. Those were the original forests of Singapore.
In the Singapore Botanic Gardens, 6 hectares of Singapore's original rainforest were conserved for posterity and research.
Well, as a conservation authority, we have to prioritize the conservation of primary rainforest. What a primary forest is that through many, many centuries of evolution, it's literally become a totally self-contained organism. So what we have here is one of the defining trees that you see in a deep tropical primary rainforest in Southeast Asia, the Dipterocarps. They are extremely tall. Some of them go upwards of 80 meters tall. Those are the tallest trees in the forest. The canopy layer is about another 10 or 20 meters below that. And that's where most of the tree-living animals, for example, your monkeys, your gibbons, your squirrels, most of your birds hang out. And below that, you will find that the forest floor is surprisingly clear because of the canopy cover that cuts out a lot of light. Dead plants is broken down into nutrients which then feed the growing plants very efficiently. And at the same time, dead animals, for example, will be broken down first, of course, by scavengers such as a monitor lizard. A forest has evolved into a perfect recycling machine. It's very high in biodiversity, many types of plants, many types of animals. And this is what you get in a very complex, very rich, very old primary rainforest.
This sliver of rainforest offers a glimpse at the green paradise Singapore once was before it was colonized in the 19th century.
Before 1819, Singapore was basically covered in forest. The key thing that happened with the arrival of imperialism is the ability to shape and change the landscape. By the 20th century, 98% of the original forest cover was gone. What this meant was it was replaced with cash crops, primarily pepper and gambier. And so the effects of that throughout the ecological system were devastating. Many different species of plants and animals were wiped out. As high as 75% of all native species were destroyed.
What remains of the island's original forest is mostly located around Singapore's highest hill, Bukit Timah.
It was difficult to start up a plantation or a farm on a place with very steep slopes. So that was retained. That's almost our last large vestige of primary rainforest.
Without a lot of forest cover to provide a sponge. There were things such as water shortages in the 19th century. In the 1880s, the colonial government addressed this environmental crisis by beginning a program of replanting Singapore. They developed forest reserves. It became the central catchment area. And this was an area that was reserved for forests and to protect our water supply. And it was from this central catchment area that the environmental rebirth of Singapore was going to occur.
We have found, of course, other small patches of primary rainforest that exist in our central catchment nature reserve. We can actually help protect the core nature reserve by expanding the space, bringing the biodiversity from the core nature reserve to the outside.
However, away from the nature reserves, trees weren't safe from the city's rapid growth.
As housing pushes out into what previously were agricultural areas, landscapes that were relatively natural became cement high-rises.
Trees were cleared to make way for the demands of Singapore's people and industries.
We realized that actually there's quite a number of trees that's being cut down in Singapore daily, whether it's for road expansion, whether it's for new development, and they're all brought to the sawmills for them to be processed. I don't know the official number, but I estimate that we cut down about 50 to 100 trees a day.
Morgan Yeo is a carpenter who has been using local timber to produce furniture since 2018. He says this is a sustainable practice that is unusual because carpenters and consumers haven't always valued local timber.
I would say maybe about 10%, 50% will be turned into planks. Not many goes back and circulate back to the local community. If the whole supply of the trees stops today, I will still not be able to finish the trees in my entire lifetime. So if we can grow our own trees, process the trees, use it to make into furniture, we create a nice cycle. It would be nice if the trees can be turned into something for the community, whether or not it's public furniture. I think it has an emotional connection and it just gives a lot more value in our day-to-day life.
Public discussions about forest conservation have trended during the pandemic. Chin Tat may have wandered into conservation alone, but he found allies in fellow residents, the nature community, and elected officials.
A 40-year-old forest is home to creatures over many life cycles.
There was definitely happiness that a member of parliament is speaking up for conserving this green patch.
Through public engagement, about half of Dover Forest was saved. While the eastern half will be turned into a housing estate, some areas in the western half will be conserved as a nature park.
Some of these areas are worthy of enhancement, restoration. These other patches of forested land can come in very useful.
This journey has taught me that there are others of our fellow citizens who are for development, for more housing. We have to work out among ourselves so what is the best consensus going forward.
Deforestation isn't the only unnatural practice that arrived during the colonial era. Singapore was known as a hub for the wildlife trade, and the city must grapple with this dark legacy to be truly green. Being green isn't just about caring for trees. It's also about our relationship with the creatures who live in green habitats. From the 19th century, British colonialists documented wildlife in Singapore and the region.
They began to collect animals, send them back to England, preserve them, and part of this was curiosity. But it also had a metaphorical power to it of identification meant control.
A native primate bears the name of British pioneer Sir Stamford Raffles.
The Raffles banded langur, it's a critically endangered monkey that's only found in Singapore and a small area in Malaysia. So it's not that easy to find them. But within Thomson Nature Park, it is actually a hot spot. It poured early in the morning and it's still quite, wet. So the chances of spotting them are quite low.
Andy Ang is a research scientist and the chairperson of the Raffles Banded Langur Working Group.
So what I do is mainly researching, meaning we need to go out to the field, collect basic observational data. Where they are, how many are there, what kind of food plants do they eat, so that we can build a database of plant species so that we can identify plants to be restored within their habitat to increase food resources. If you can also restore habitats and reconnect fragmented habitats, they also have higher mating opportunities and increase the population size. Up to the 1920s, at least in Singapore, they can still be found in various forests, but with urban development, it actually cuts up the habitats such that only a very small population remain. And currently, there's only 68 individuals left in Singapore, with only about 300 left in Malaysia. So just now, I went in to check one of our cameras that have been installed on the ground to detect animal movement. It can help us understand the abundance of the animal. Deforestation, of course, is really sad. There's quite limited forested land left. We are seeing it declining more and more. If we were to remove those forest homes of the wildlife, that's when they might come into conflict with people.
Deforestation had led to deadly conflicts between wildlife and humans in the past. When Singapore's original forests were cleared for plantations, a legendary predator pounced.
Tigers like to live in disturbed forest areas. Primary forest is not a good place for a tiger because there's very little food on the ground. Disturbed forest, the edge of forest, is where deer, pigs, and other prey live. And as Singapore became increasingly deforested, basically it was prime land for tigers. And the first tiger attack was around 1830, and over the next 3 or 4 decades, there were hundreds, if not thousands, of humans that were actually killed by tigers. And then once Singapore became environmentally devastated, deforested, the tigers disappeared.
While farm expansion killed animals, the port's growth accelerated the trading of wildlife.
Singapore was very important to the wildlife trade. Almost every ship that came into port had some unique species on it, exotic animals from Indonesia, throughout the world. There were wild animal emporiums that were located along Rocher Road and various things during the colonial era, where you could buy a monkey or a tapir, any type of a wild animal. Some of them might stay in Singapore to form zoos or circuses here. They were exported. And this trade continued officially until the 1980s.
Singapore has started implementing the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora.
But the trade continued illegally. There's been mounting pressure on Singapore to stop wildlife and wildlife products from passing through its ports. And the global pandemic's link with wildlife markets has been a tipping point. In the year 2021, Singapore banned the domestic trade of ivory. It also stepped up its wildlife forensics capabilities and launched a special canine unit.
Dogs have a lot of sensory nerves in their nose and much better than any machinery can replicate at this point in time. It's very important because not all illegal wildlife trade look like big elephant tusks. Some of them are highly processed, but the canine unit has the ability to sniff them out. Not only it helps us in the detection, but it helps us in the deterrence as well. The Center for Wildlife Forensics looks at the illegal wildlife trade specimens. So even very processed ivory, we can extract DNA from it and identify that species. We could narrow down the geographic location and also probably narrow down where these poachers and syndicates were operating in. This allows us to give very useful information to the enforcement agencies in this source country. So in doing that, Singapore is playing its part to stem this illegal wildlife trade.
To stop the domestic trade of wildlife, local authorities work with the Animal Concerns Research and Education Society, ACRES.
Concerned members of public do call us when they spot abandoned or released illegally kept exotic wild animals such as tortoises, turtles, green iguanas, ball pythons from Africa.
ACRES says Singaporeans trade in exotic wildlife knowingly and unknowingly.
They might believe that once you see an advertisement online or in a Telegram group chat or even at a shop, they think it should be legal. I can purchase the animal and keep the animal as a pet at home. But most wild animals are prohibited to be sold or kept as pets in Singapore. Sadly, one of the misconceptions that people may have is that they can care for these wild animals. No matter how much they love wild animals, at the end of the day, they have so much complex needs that it's almost impossible to meet their needs in captivity. Most of these wild animals whom we rescue come in with underlying health issues because of the way they have been cared for before or the diet they've been given. We take care of them, and we also take effort to repatriate them to the country of origin where they could have been smuggled from.
The habit of keeping household pets was introduced in the colonial era. But when pets go wild, they can become pests.
Originally, Javan mynas were introduced to Singapore as singing birds, so people would keep them in cages. Beginning in the 1930s and 1940s, however, a few of these birds were released, and they bred, their numbers expanded. So if you go to any hawker center or almost anywhere in Singapore, you will see a Javan myna scavenging around the edges.
While mynas have become unsightly urban pests, other birds are a welcome sight.
Afternoon is when there's a lot of heat thermals, and that's when the birds of prey, or we call them raptors, like to come out to fly. Because with these thermals, they actually don't need to use strength to flap. They just spread their wings and they can soar and search for food.
Bird watching has become a popular pastime in recent years, and it's about more than taking pretty pictures.
Bird watching it's monitoring. It's understanding what birds are coming, how many, where are they coming from, where they're heading to. Birdwatching provides that vital information that managers and scientists need.
There are actually some raptors that we have recorded in Singapore. They have not been recorded elsewhere in Southeast Asia.
Many people say birds are, in a way, an early alert system to tell us that nature is functioning as we would hope.
Over 400 species of birds live in Singapore. And nature lovers celebrate the return of wildlife to the island. But are residents ready for encounters with wild creatures? Otters made international news for biting a British man 26 times in the Botanic Gardens.
It's really unfortunate. That's not the first time that it happened. It's probably not going to be the last time as well.
Unfortunately, construction and development and clearing of forests, the wild animals will be displaced, and that will create more human-wildlife conflict situations in the surrounding towns as well.
Potential residents need to know what to expect. You're going to see long-tailed macaques, the monkeys, you're going to see the snakes, you might see some wild pigs or some squirrels. So I think managing their expectations, teaching them how to coexist is very important.
You will have fun, but at the same time understand the real-life issues related to conflict as well.
Recently, we had a great opportunity where we will train and share the concepts on coexistence with the OBS instructors, where we train the trainers and then they become catalysts to keep the message going to the rest of the community. We need to also learn to be good neighbors to our wild animals. We need to learn to accept that killing and removal is not the only solutions.
While Singaporeans learn to be better stewards of nature, they're also rediscovering their green fingers.
A lot of people don't realize most Singaporeans were farmers.
The Singapore Garden Festival showcases award-winning landscaping and vegetables of record-breaking size. While the state encourages gardening through competitions and community gardens, the green habit can be traced to Singapore's farm and kampong days.
When the younger Singaporeans look at the older people happily working in the garden or in the farm, so they also emulate them, and then they find this beautiful magic of nature. So that is why, especially in times of stress, that pandemic, they will all go back to nature.
Singapore's connection with farming goes back more than 2 centuries. During the colonial era, forested land was sold to agriculturists to make way for plantations. To support the agriculture industry, the Singapore Botanic Gardens was established in 1859. Today, they cultivate orchids with modern science. But a century ago, they experimented on cash crops from around the world. Their most famous breakthrough was in rubber.
The tree you see behind me is the rubber tree. And lots of people don't know this, but Singapore is actually the founding place of the rubber industry as we know it today. In 1888, Sir Henry Nicholas Ridley, the first director of Botanic Gardens, he started experimenting on the best ways, the best methods to tap the tree. This herringbone pattern was refined and developed. And because of this method, rubber trees can actually be tapped for upwards of 20 years. And that's actually a very long productive lifespan for rubber.
Botanists basically took a wild plant from South America and domesticated it. And then that spread not only throughout Singapore, but throughout Malaya, throughout the East Indies, throughout Vietnam. And so the Singapore Botanic Gardens was, in many respects, the seed that then transformed the environmental landscape in the entire region.
Singapore was too small to support the world's insatiable demand for cash crop products, so the plantations moved up to Malaya.
The plantations were then left for a while when, the industry shifted and then kampongs happened.
People moved there and they grew food there and were able to support themselves.
And then after that, the kampongs were left because the young people could move into public housing and all the artifacts were left behind.
A lot of people don't realize, especially Singaporeans, that Singapore was the center of agriculture, so most people were farmers.
Ivy Singh Lim is a descendant of wealthy landowners and grew up on a plantation estate.
We were trained from young by gardeners watchmen, servants to respect land. It's not just something that you use to make money, but you respect it because it provided you with food.
So beginning in the 1930s, a lot of the land in Singapore was transitioned over to food production, and this was quite successful. In 1980, Singapore produced about 100% of its pork needs, 100% of its eggs, and for other things such as chicken and duck, about 70% of our needs were met by agriculture in Singapore. And even for fish and leafy vegetables, 25%.
Then, in the 1980s, Singapore pivoted land use away from agriculture towards industrialization and housing. The country came to depend on imported food. Eventually, only about 1% of Singapore's total land would be used for food farming. By the early 2000s, such farms had become such a rare curiosity that they became attractions for recreation and tourism. One example is Bollywood Farms. It mainly serves as a getaway for wary city folk.
We call it paradise. And we want to share this magic with all the Singaporeans who come to our beautiful little plot of land. I did not start Bollywood Veggies as a money-making enterprise. It was basically a lifestyle.
Wow, what banana is this?
I have bananas. I make it into banana cakes. It's called value added. It's not about selling vegetables. Unless you have large-scale production.
Farm 85 has been growing vegetables since 1991. 100% of their produce is sold in the local market. It's a family-owned business that says it believes in farming the traditional way.
到现在，农业还是在运行着，也是最传统的，这个是最好的成就。
The farm has successfully adapted to compete with imports from Malaysia and rising costs at home.
其实这个农业在新加坡变化是相当的大。以前是政府分发的地，那个是租金相当便宜，几十块钱一年。
After 25 years in the business, Farm 85 has been told its lease would not be renewed. The military will repurpose the land. The episode illustrates the challenging trade-offs that occur on an island with limited space.
对于我们务农者来讲，是一个很大的打击，因为我们朝向的是长期务农。 可是他在给我们延期几年了之后，我们的心态就会慢慢改变，因为留不住的地方你就必须要走。农粮技术说有发放新地，那我们去做高科技，而我本身认为技术不成熟。
While the traditional farmer is skeptical about high-tech farming, others see it as the way forward. In the eastern town of Tampines, an agri-tech startup built this vertical farm test bed against the side wall of a public housing block.
What that means is that we can use underutilized spaces in the HDB areas to actually now farm food for the nation.
So we can put up a 6-story farm within few days. And really the brain behind is the IT solution. So we have sensor that wire up for the entire farm.
We can gather data from our light sensors, our water and nutrient sensors, and we even have a weather station at the top of our farm, which helps us collect real-time data to improve our farming decisions.
So we control the water and nutrients. We also control the supplementary light.
Netatech says the vegetables mature every 15 to 30 days. And their 6-story farm can provide enough vegetables for over 120 people. To make the vertical farms more appealing, Netatech is working with the Singapore University of Technology and Design.
Our idea is to have every single farm blend together with the architecture of the blocks, okay? And also every single farm should be a masterpiece of art itself.
There is room to grow, as there are about 10,000 blocks of HDB flats in Singapore. Scaling up their vertical farms will take time, but theirs is just one of many efforts in a national campaign. Singapore's government is investing big on transforming the agri-food sector. It's part of a master plan to produce 30% of all the city's food needs locally by 2030.
In 1980, 2.5 million people were able to produce enough food to sustain themselves. Today, we have 2 to 3 times as many people, and so to actually support 30% on limited land space will be quite a challenge.
With existential challenges on the horizon, the nation is developing new ways to grow and yet be green.
Imagine a city where coexistence with nature becomes possible.
How can the city balance its thirst to grow with an increasing desire to be green? For over half a century, part of Singapore's solution was to be a garden city.
Under the independent government of Singapore after 1959, there were numerous programs that were developed, particularly for urban greenery.
While the garden city concept was borrowed from Britain, Singapore's leaders made it a founding principle for the new nation.
Mr. Lee Kuan Yew planting the first tree as Prime Minister to impress upon the people of Singapore that tree planting, greenery, nature in Singapore is going to be part of Singapore's DNA.
The program itself is an extreme positive for the island. Hundreds of thousands and millions of trees and plants have been planted over time.
Tree planting was largely about creating livability, improving the quality of life for Singapore citizens, but also of making Singapore a more attractive place to visit or to do business in. That stretch of road coming in from the airport to the city was very carefully conceived. It's this tree-lined boulevard pulling you into the city. It was really about creating this experience of being in a lush garden.
The early phase of the Garden City project prioritized beauty and order over naturalness. So the city would plant flowers from South America and neat rows of a single species of tree from America. Today, the National Parks Board plants a variety of native trees and vegetation and grows them in a way that emulates forests.
See, this is a multi-tiered forest planting that we have implemented along the roadside, and it provides support for local biodiversity to thrive.
The planting style, right, is literally emulating the structure of a primary rainforest. There's actually an emergent layer, there's a canopy layer, there's a shrubbery layer, and there's a ground cover layer, so that all these birds, all these mammals, all these insects will be comfortable living there, using them as connectors.
The state's vision has evolved from that of being a garden city to being a city in nature.
This city in nature really is not just city of everything planted in nice, neat rows, but it's to have that and the city as an ecosystem also.
Within our city in nature vision, Singapore forms a network, a matrix of big green patches, high quality forests, being connected by connectors as well as stepping stones. Now, tree planting is also incorporated into our 1 million trees movement. We aim to put in 1 million trees together with the community by the year 2030.
Through the 1 million trees movement, after planting a tree, they can put their name and all the trees that they have planted will appear on the Singapore map, which is Trees SG. So it's like leaving a legacy for future generations.
The relationship between citizens and the state could shape the way green is integrated in the future.
Increasingly, the engagements have gotten wider and wider, earlier and earlier in the design process.
At Dover Forest, the Housing Development Board consults with residents and friends of the forest on what to conserve.
From my interactions with HDB, they're quite earnest to learn about what I have found in the forest.
Chin Tat says the forest contains the remains of his ancestral village, the old kampong his late father would reminisce about.
My dad made references to some streams in the kampong, so probably this could be one of them.
The Housing Board plans to incorporate the streams and surrounding trees into the new housing estate. And Chin Tat says they want to do it in a way that's biophilic.
Biophilia is our innate attraction to nature. Biophilic design, by extension, is the creation of environments in which elements and attributes of nature are present. Khoo Teck Puat Hospital is one of the most exceptional hospitals in the world from a biophilic standpoint. There are large amounts of carefully selected greenery that are deeply enmeshed within the fabric of the architecture and within the site. The hospital landscape extends seamlessly into Yishun Pond. The site is now a biodiversity hotspot. There are literally hundreds of birds, fishes, insects that have been spotted here.
Buildings with biophilic designs can benefit nature and neighborhoods. For example, the green wall on Oasia Hotel downtown boosts biodiversity.
It attracts small animals and birds to the green facade. That greenery also reduces surface temperature of the building, which reduces the urban heat island effect, which affects adjacent buildings.
The architectural firm that designed the Oasia Hotel downtown released this vision of Singapore in 2100. It represents a quantum leap in design, where skyscrapers are 50% dedicated to greenery.
Multiple buildings with lots of greenery can bring the urban temperature down or create these nodes of biodiversity. A city can over time become an ecological network. Imagine a city where there is room for both human and non-human life, where coexistence with nature becomes possible.
I think Singaporeans have an ideal of living in harmony with nature in which the nature is controlled and contained and monitored to fit their needs.
But city in nature means there must be aspects of wilderness, wild animals, wild habitats. But perhaps the mindset of people in Singapore, we need to do more. A good start would be through nature education.
Since the year 2016, a range of forest schools have emerged. They teach children how to respect and enjoy nature.
We feel it's really important for very young children to be exposed to the outdoors at the earliest possible age. It's healthy and it's good for our overall well-being and our mental health.
Feel what the ground feels like.
The Wildlings Forest School has leased an acre of land for children to explore.
All right, come, let's go. Up back here.
Coming to Wildlings should feel like an escape, where the children are away from the city and they are in a wild space. We can allow the children to pluck the plants. We can allow the children to dig in the ground. We can allow the children to use the leaves and the sticks. We can overcome those constraints that are put in public spaces.
Having a space of their own lets the school recreate childhood experiences cherished by earlier generations of Singaporeans. Climbing trees, catching insects, and longkang fishing.
It reminds me of what my mom would share with me, and she would say, like, we used to catch dragonflies. I used to get into the longkang. So when I see the children engage in that, I'm like, yes, this is what children should be engaged in, like it gives them just pure joy, and they learn to take care of themselves when they're out in nature.
The young people before had a very different kind of interaction with nature, a kind that you can't teach in a book.
Oh, wow.
Beyond just playing in nature, the children learn about native wildlife and ways to care for the environment.
So, real beetles, what do you think the horns are for?
We're helping these children to grow up to be stewards of our planet. When they value nature, they're more likely to make decisions that will protect it and that will enhance it and perhaps undo some of the damage that we have done.
Protecting nature can ultimately protect the health of citizens.
Really good.
Singapore's diverse plants are a treasure trove for researchers at the SingHealth Duke NUS Institute of Biodiversity Medicine.
Although Singapore is a small country, it has more than 4,000 species culture. There are a lot to be discovered, explored for their medical and health benefits.
The aromatics can be used in what we call anti-nauseous.
There are also plants that, for example, are known to have anti-cancer properties. And again, we want to study these plants all the way to its genes and proteins. We want to explore if our local plants can help our cancer patients. We can even think about bring back some of the species that are extinct through the latest technology.
As Singapore unlocks the power of green through advances in science and architecture, farming and wildlife protection, conservation and awareness, it's making peace with nature and emerging with a greener way forward.
There is a shift in terms of mindset of the value of biodiversity and habitats in Singapore.
It's fantastic that more and more people in Singapore are actually very committed to the spirit of stewardship of nature in Singapore.
This is not only good for Singapore, I think this would be good for getting us out of these environmental crises that we find ourselves in.
There is always a constant struggle between conservation and development. As we grow into the city in nature, I will remain hopeful that we will be able to achieve that balance.
When we are surrounded by green, you can see that there is life.